Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to SLAM School. My name is Nicole. I am the Vice President of SLAM, and we are excited to have you here for what I believe is our fifth installment, Ontario's reminded me, of our bi-weekly SLAM School series, where we're hoping to share different ways that we can use multimedia, all forms of media, to get our students and ourselves civically engaged in this troubled time. I'll have more information for you about the SLAM Assembly and our relationship to the National Council of Teachers of English later on in our broadcast. But right now, I'm excited to say that we're going to be talking for the next 20 minutes about letter writing and how we can use the skill of letter writing to contact our elected officials and others to advocate for the political issues and other things that are important to us. And we're very excited to have with us a special guest to talk about that. But first, I wanted to go down the line to our SLAM president and to our President Emeritus to introduce themselves. Robin, could you just say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Seglem from Illinois State University.
Hi, everyone. My name is Antero Garcia, and I'm an assistant professor at Stanford University.
Awesome. And to lead our session today, we're very excited to have Mr. Bud Hunt, who is the IT and Technical Services Manager for the Clearview Library District in Northern Colorado. I think I got that right.
You nailed it.
Yes, and our dear friend Bud is going to help us out, so thank you for being here, Bud.
Absolutely. This is fun. I love the idea of SLAM School, so thanks for letting me come and play with you guys, and for letting me get a pretend reason to talk about something that I care very much about, which is letter writing. It's a thing that I've been sort of nerding out on the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm going to grab the screen if I can, and I just want to run through a few different things and some ideas, and then hopefully talk to you guys a little bit about letter writing. I approached Antero about talking about this topic a little while ago because about 2 years ago, I realized that I was doing a ton of reaching out to people and communicating and spending my time engaging and doing this and doing that. And it was always in front of a keyboard and on the screen. And I made a New Year's resolution 2 years ago that I was going to start writing letters to actual people. And I made that resolution in part because I had fallen down a rabbit hole of fountain pens, which is, well, we can talk more about that, and we will just a bit. But more importantly, I realized that letters were sort of what emails kind of were, and what Twitter could be sometimes, but they're also sort of a deeper thing. And I think it's really important to talk about them in the context of political activism, but also as an English teacher, as a way to really reach a particular audience. Because when you write a letter, a lot of times you're writing to one actual by gum human being. So it's a very real and authentic thing to do in the classroom. And there's a lot of reasons to do it out in the world. I've got on the screen a 99% Invisible episode from actually from December, maybe late November. Yeah, November of last year. And this is one of my favorite episodes of the show. It talks about the Office of Presidential Correspondence, which is a little room in the EEOC or EEOB that sifts through all the mail, the physical mail and the mail submitted via websites that comes into the president every day. And President Obama famously, or not so famously, I just think it's great, wanted to get 10 unfiltered letters from all the ones that were sent to him in a day, and they were put into his briefing packet every night. So here's the nuclear launch stuff and the semi-private security stuff and what's going to happen with the economy tomorrow. And then here's 10 letters from the American people, randomly selected for a bunch of reasons. And he said that those were so precious to him because they gave him one of his only unfiltered, sort of not pandering to him sort of things that he got to experience every day. And I think it's a good reminder that we can write in ways that really give people a sense of the world, and we can write to our representatives to remind them just who it is that they might happen to be representing. And I know that on this show, you guys have talked a great deal about, in fact, Nicole, I think you did in the second episode of SLAM School, talked about how to actually find the addresses of your people, your professional people. And that's great. But I guess what I want to push on before we even get there is to talk about what an effective letter is. And as an English teacher, I'm reminded that that's a rhetorical thing, right? It's about audience and it's about purpose. And in the context of reaching out to your congressional representative, a lot of times it's, hey, I want to tell you that I think this and I believe this And you need to know that because I happen to know some things. Sometimes you're coming as a position of expertise. Sometimes you're coming as a constituent. You're coming as a vote. Hey, I'm going to write to you. And if you don't do this thing I want you to do, I am not going to vote for you. And I'm going to tell all my friends to not vote for you. But I hope that sometimes the effect or the affect of your letter is to actually say, hey, I care about you. And I want you to know I'm rooting for you. And here's the thing you did that I like, which is some of why I like personal correspondence more and more, is it's a good reminder that we are people. Offices are staffed by people, and they're human beings, and we can use the medium of correspondence to reach out to them and actually just try to have and create human moments, which I think are really important and really great. And so real quickly, I just want to talk about some things that I think are important when you write both a professional letter, but also not a professional letter. And by that, I mean, I think it's important to think about writing our representatives and also writing about writing love letters, because sometimes those overlap, I promise, I think. And so just real quick, when you write a letter to anybody, you're gonna follow a basic letter format. These are certainly things that matter and are relevant. Here's one particular letter format that ThoughtCo has out right now. It says basically, you know, say who you're writing to and who you are. Dear sir or madam, as the case may be, I am an English teacher from Northern Colorado and I am mad, right? Or I am a PhD, so and such in here or whatever, or I'm a voter and this is the thing that I thought was happening when I voted for you and what was going on. And so that's the thing. Then get specific about the thing, right? So ask them to do something or tell them why you're writing. Tell them more about the thing that you're asking them to do or tell them why you're writing. And then remind them, hey, I'm writing this thing. And I point out forms because in English class, a lot of times forms are derided as the bad thing. We never want the 5-paragraph, but I have to tell you that professional letter writers for hundreds of years have been referring to books of sample form letters to turn over into their own personal letters to write correspondence. And we do that today with websites and things. And we still want to send letters, although it's actually harder to send a physical piece of mail to Congress than it used to be. Do you guys know they irradiate all their mail? There's a certain block of zip codes in Washington, D.C. that irradiates all the mail that comes to it. Do you know why? You're all muted. So I will tell you why.
Tell me why.
Anthrax.
Oh, no.
The anthrax scare several years ago, and I actually stumbled onto, I'm not going to show it to you guys today, but I stumbled onto a RFP for an irradiating facility because it's a government contract. And every few years, the irradiating congressional mail thing is up for review. Congress decided not to spend $7 million to build their own irradiation facility in 2008, but they did reserve the right to hang on to the money for that irradiation facility. That sounds like Congress, doesn't it? But anyway, the letters still get there even if you send them via email, but the format itself is a good thing and it matters a great deal. And I see a question from the internet. Antero says that it's hard to continue to encourage folks to write letters when so often they aren't read. I'm glad you brought that up. The actual likelihood of a letter getting read goes up if you do a couple of things. The first thing is you write an actual letter. And I don't mean that you handwrite it necessarily or you type it, both are good. But it's really important to take the time to genuinely have a thought and an idea. A lot of times professional action campaigns, PACs and nonprofits and whatever will say, hey, we need you to support us in this. Here's a form letter to use. Please just send it and paste your name. The people who are reading letters sent to government offices are smart people. They know when they're getting the same letter 15 times. What turns them like everybody else is an actual personal thing. So that matters a great deal. And timeliness matters. If congressional mail is getting irradiated and it's going to take an extra week because it has to pass through literally an oven to get to the office, sometimes you want to use the contact forms on the websites. But what format your words go, handwriting them or physically sending them with keyboard, still a great thing to do, especially if you do the follow-up, which is to actually call the congressperson that you wrote to. Nicole, you've mentioned in the past to remind folks to think about the particular staffer who might be working on a particular issue. So if you're interested in education, there's one, maybe two people in the office working on education, both at the state and at the federal office. Find that person, write specifically to that person, and then call 2 weeks later and say, hey, I just want to make sure you got my letter and check in on how things are going. Really important for building a longer term relationship. And that's what I mean when I say this kindness and making connections with human beings. It's more important to establish a long-term, reasonable, not freakishly, I write you every 30 days, how are you doing, what's going on, hey, are you, you know, sort of gym class, pass the letter sort of thing, not gym class, but English class, pass the letter sort of thing. But really important to think about building a relationship long-term over an issue or a set of issues and a concern or series of concerns that you have. Get to know these folks, and they get to recognize your voice on the phone, which has happened to me in some congressional offices. And if you're kind and polite and an actual human being, it's kind of pleasant to talk to somebody in the office like that. Even if you're disagreeing, than it is to talk for the first time for somebody else. Another question that Antero is pushing this way is about convincing students to write to folks when they know that these representatives don't care. And I guess my challenge and push is that everybody cares in an office like that. Nobody goes into a congressional office saying, you know what, I really want to make some cash. I'm really hoping as a page in Senator so-and-so's office that I can get rich and I can make connections and never have to work again. There is some connection stuff going on there, but most of these folks are passionate, they care, and they're actual human beings, particularly when you talk about state and local representatives. These are people who live in your town, who in the state of Colorado, our legislature is part-time. These folks have other jobs, they have other things that they do. This is actually like a side hustle, being a legislator for them. So they actually do care very much because they're busting a hump to make it work. So again, it's a reminder that these are folks. And the reason I like physical paper-based correspondence so much is that it reminds me that I'm writing to a human being. And when they receive that, and there's a lot of great resources I'll share at the end about what it feels like to get a handwritten letter, you remember there's a person there. In fact, if you think about this real quick, close your eyes and think about the last time you got a handwritten piece of mail from somebody. Okay. Did it feel better than getting something typed, no matter what the content was, right? And if the content was an intelligent political argument, you probably remembered it a little bit longer. So, Nicole, did you have a good one?
I have, and there's something special about, and I would advocate for the handwriting. I think there's something special about the handwritten letter. And I do think also that there's that point that you mentioned about how letters have to be filed as opposed to emails or other kinds of communication. So for the folks that feel like maybe they're in a state where their representatives consistently vote against their interests, or they feel like they're in the minority, there's still something to be said about having that feeling of knowing that you've put your voice on record, and that they have to do something with that physical piece of paper that you've sent in with your opinion on it, which I think is important.
Absolutely. In that same PDF that I was talking about, the RFP for irradiation, there is a reminder about the rules regarding receiving correspondence. And you don't have to keep the irradiated copy, but you do have to make a copy of that and keep it for all of the days, which I think is delightful. And reading old letters is also really fun. And if you've got time in your classroom, helping students to uncover old letters written to senators, Congress folks, just people in general, that's a great way to remember that the written word is as, I'll show you this real quick. This guy, okay, not as quick as I thought because application window, there we go. Nope, that's not it. There we go. If you don't read Brain Pickings, you should, but this is a particular reference to a book called To the Letter, which is a history sort of Simon Garfield's. It's sort of a love letter about letters, if you will. But he says that, he quotes Patrick Larkin in this piece, who says, or Philip Larkin, he says, what will survive of us is love. Letters fulfill and safeguard this prophecy. Without letters, we risk losing sight of our history. The decline and abandonment of letters, the price of progress, will be an immeasurable defeat. Reminding folks that lots of people have written lots of letters in the spirit of lots of things is a good reminder that these things care. These things really, really, really care. For the sake of time, I just want to say, as somebody who didn't used to write letters, it takes time to develop the habit. And if I could, I'd like to talk just for like 1 minute about how I developed a letter writing habit. And it's as simple as this. When you say, man, I'm going to finally write a letter to a congressperson, it only takes 10 or 15 minutes to write the letter, but it takes a half hour to find the paper and an envelope and a stamp and then an address and then actually remember to mail it. So this, you should do this in your life. This is what I do. This is my letter writing packet. It is a manila folder. It is purple because that's the folder I could find. It has 4 things in it. It has a $5 piece of or tablet of writing paper. It has stamps because you always need a stamp and they're really cheap. Like, also, if you buy forever stamps and hold them for long enough, they actually go up in value, except for this year in January. That'll be a fun thing for you to Google later. And then some fancy note cards for when I just want to write a thank you note. And a list of people that I've written to. That's it. That's what's in my thing. It's with me wherever I go. And whenever I say, you know what, I want to write a letter, I can pull that out. It's all right there, and I can get right away. If you think you want to start corresponding with your congresspeople or the people down the street or a friend or a teacher, get those 4 things, put them in a folder, and carry them around with you. Lots of questions. I want to try to get to those. A single letter, somebody's asking, a single letter doesn't necessarily incite change, or is it? Yeah, it can, it will, because you're not the only person writing a letter about an issue that you care about. And there are ways to make 1 letter 10 letters. You can have a letter writing party. We actually do this at our library. We just started. We put out stationery and stamps on a Saturday, and folks can come in and we will mail their letter. We bought them the stamp. We put all the things down. We don't care what the letter's about. We'll put it in the mail on Monday morning. You can do this around an issue. You can have a write-in, a sit-in, a student in. You can require your students to write letters, provide them with envelopes and stamps, and that can totally happen. Questions about getting excited about outdated modes of writing. I would say if you've never received a handwritten letter, you don't understand how great it can be. So you should send a few. It's very easy to make this an infectious practice in your classroom. Pick 5 people over the course of a month that you think need a 3-sentence reminder that they are special, important, or have done something nice or well. You can write those in about 10 minutes. You put them in the mail, and you will notice that people are paying attention. If you then ask them to write to 5 more people, or you just decide, I'm going to do 5 a week, that can happen, and it makes a difference. So I think it was Ashley was curious about that. It can happen. Also, this sounds like a cop-out, but if you're trying to focus on typing skills with your students, help them print the letter out and put it in an envelope and mail it. That is just as good in some cases as a handwritten letter, and I think it works. So yes, I would suggest pen pal programs in schools, as the questioner is there. And gosh, we're getting close to your time, but let's hit a couple of these questions.
I'm summarizing for you, bud. It looks like there's a theme going on here of a lot of folks. Number one, frustrated by the fact that sometimes when we send letters, especially to folks that receive a whole ton of mail, like the president, it may not be read by the president, or it might not be read by the intended person you're sending it to. And then also I'm seeing a theme that, that means you may not receive a reply. You might receive, if you're lucky, you might receive a form reply, but you may not receive anything at all. So how do you keep the momentum going when you feel like maybe that people aren't reading this letter that you're sending and you're not going to hear anything directly from them?
Yeah, and this is why I think it's about building relationships and not single issue writing. I think two things. One, writing a letter is an act of faith and an act of love in some small degree, because you are deciding to say, this is worth my time and I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to send it off and to let you hear what I'm going to say. It's what every writer does. It's being brave in a dangerous and scary way. And sometimes when you're brave, you don't get any feedback. But if it really is an act of faith, you might send a second letter. Or practically, with a congressional office, you make that phone call. Hey, did you get my letter? I sent it a couple of weeks ago. I was just making sure. Oh, you didn't. What can I do to make sure the next one gets there? I'd be glad to resend this one. Is there somebody I should make it in care of? Is there a different address? Should I send it to the state office rather than the Capitol? Those sorts of follow-ups make a difference, because if you're trying to really genuinely establish a relationship, that's how you're going to get there. And I would say it can be discouraging to not get a reply, but I think if you build a habit of writing letters, you will discover that people sometimes reply in surprising ways. So sometimes it works even though you don't get a letter back.
Yeah, and I think a good question to kind of end on is this great question here about what a letter writer can do to be memorable and human and thoughtful to really increase your chances of maybe getting a relationship started. So what do you think are some things? And I would recommend, again, that article that Bud was mentioning from the New York Times Magazine about what Obama's letter reading habits were, because it really is powerful. But what do you think are some of the things that folks can do to write that memorable letter? Yeah,
I think telling stories is important, right? I think it's important to, again, that 3-part sort of frame of here's the thing I want, and here's who I am. Here's a bit about why that matters and is important, and then here's what I want again. That middle part of the sandwich is the personal narrative. It's the powerful moment. Hey, I know this may not be important to you, but my family really struggles with the fact that whatever it is, because Grandpa Joe has this thing. Now, I'm not saying make it up. I'm saying genuinely tell your story. And that may dictate when you write a letter versus when you make a phone call versus when you tweet something, right? But trying to draw that out and build the relationship and the personalness of it. So everybody's got a story to tell, and finding a way to personalize the issue that you're trying to advocate for or write about or explore is very, very powerful. Very powerful. And if you write that same letter to both of your senators, write it differently, because that matters too. And it's an opportunity for you to practice that story.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is the building blocks of a strong, powerful, persuasive essay. And these are things that English teachers care about, that all of us care about having our students do better. And so I think having an authentic audience for that, like you're saying, even if we don't hear back from them, there's an empowering feeling to knowing that you've been able to express your story and send it off. There's something I think powerful about that motion. Absolutely, and it's real. I mean, even if they don't write you back, 99 times out of 100, when you don't receive the letter back that says, sender not found, whatever, it actually got into the mailbox and was probably read. Mm-hmm. So it's very real writing. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And this is like a quick fire, and we got a lot of people asking questions, which we're really excited about. We want to keep this going for our next Slam School. So thank you so much, Bud, for taking the time and getting us excited about the active love of letter writing, which I think is really beautiful.
Absolutely. I hope you'll all write letters, at least 1 or 2 a month. It's life-changing.
Awesome. I'm going to turn it over to Antero real quick to let us know about when we'll have our next Slam School meeting and a little bit about how you can join us next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. And Bud, thank you so much. We had a lot of engaged talk both in the YouTube chat, and I think I'm going to encourage folks to jump into our Slam hashtag #SlamEDU to continue the conversation, and I'll keep bugging Bud to get him to respond over there. Our next Slam School is actually next week. We usually do every other week, but due to scheduling concerns between 2 superstars, Bud and Deonza Rogers, we will be doing back-to-back. Next week, Day's returning for part 2. If you haven't seen her first class on using Facebook Live and Periscope, I would go into our YouTube channel and check that out, but you don't need to have seen it to join us next week. Next week, she'll be talking about effective forms of documenting things in real life. So for example, if you are on an airline and you see an injustice occurring in real life, this would be, what's the best approach to holding a camera? How do you get the best sound? Do you narrate video? Those kinds of approaches, both in schools and out. And so we hope you join us there. If you have other questions, if you're looking for links to join those classes or to join SLAM, the Studies in Literacy and Multimedia organization, the assembly, please go to slam.education and join us there. In any case, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.